אנחנו נעשה עכשיו שיחה עם אדם שנמצא בחוץ לארץ, הוא נמצא בניו יורק באמצעות, אני מניח, זום או טכנולוגיה אחרת, תכף נראה איך זה יעבוד. אז לפני שאני מתחבר איתו, אני רוצה להציג אותו, אז אני אנסה את הכמה שניות הללו. Oh, hello.
Hello.
Hello, Mark.
Good to speak to you.
Yeah, it's good to speak to you too. Just as a buy, we had the same thing about maybe 10 years ago when you came to Israel to Paris Center for Peace to renew the accord between the New York Times and Haaretz. You must remember that. So I
remember that very clearly, and indeed meeting. I was very honored to meet. I think President Perez on that occasion. Yeah.
So here we meet again. So I just want for 20 seconds before the audience here to present you. This is Sir Mark Tofsson. Yes, he's the sir. He's been knighted by King Charles, I think, if I'm not wrong. And he is the chairman and the CEO of CNN, which we all know, the news network. And you probably did just about every interesting and big job in international media, because before that he was in a similar position as CEO of the New York Times, and before that he ran the BBC in England. And so you are also, I understand you're also chairman of Ancestry, a very interesting company, and deputy chair of the Royal Shakespeare Company. I like that. And co-chair of the International Fund for Public Interest Media. So, guys, that's the man you're seeing right now on the screen. So, obviously, we're going to talk about social networks and about business models and about TV and digital and all of that. But since these are special days, I still want to ask you a question from the belly, as we say in Hebrew. What's your take on Trump? Why did he win so big, and why did just about every news organization messed up that direction and the polls and whatever?
Okay, well, the last part about messing up, I don't think CNN messed up. I mean, we had reporters out in the swing states and across America for, all the time, but in particular, a year before the election, we reported frequently the movement of, for example, African-American men, Latino men, and more broadly, minorities towards voting for Donald Trump. I think we were pretty good with other key parts of the electorate, and we went into the election saying, certainly not suggesting that Kamala Harris and the Democrats had a lead or were expected to win. We did say the election, as far as the polls were concerned, was a kind of toss-up, that either side could win. But I thought most of the trends that emerged on the night, we'd reported pretty well. So although I think it's true that news media in 2016 really did miss the way America was changing, most of the themes that have been discussed since the result, I thought we reported beforehand. So I mean, look, ritual, beating yourself up after an election result is familiar in most countries of the media, and I think media get an immense amount of pleasure from whipping themselves. But I actually think on this occasion we didn't do a bad job at all, really. Why did he win? I want to say two things. Firstly, inflation kills incumbents. It's been killing incumbents or giving them a bloody nose around the world. And by the way, sometimes those incumbents are conservatives. I mean, an example might be Rishi Sunak's Conservatives, who went down very badly to Labour. The Sunak government was very vocally anti-woke, anti-immigrant. But the public were annoyed about multiple things, including the track of the UK economy. They got chucked out. Narendra Modi in India, Hindu nationalist populist leader, got a bloody nose. Emmanuel Macron, centre in France, got a bloody nose, and so on. So you know, inflation and annoyance at rising prices is one reason, but there are very strong cultural currents in America which are have been drifting towards support for Republicans and specifically for Donald Trump, and that's and a sense of the left, the Democrats, losing touch with the very groups that they claim to support. That's also part of the story as well, I think.
Yeah. Okay, let's dive into media and our business. We at Haaretz and TheMarker feel that social networks, social media has basically taken the lead in setting up just about every narrative in many countries, certainly in Israel. I'm not sure about other countries. What you guys at CNN are doing about the fact that young people, and even not so young people these days, are getting most of their information from social network, and it's not linear, it's digital, but it doesn't follow any rule, each one according to its own feed, according to its own algorithm. In other words, does cable TV and news channels still have anything to offer?
Well, I think one thing we've got in common with Haaretz and the rest of legacy media is we've got a natural heritage around, you know, one or two legacy traditional platforms, be it a physical newspaper, be it in case of CNN, slightly more recent, but still now 40 years old, cable TV. And interesting enough, a lot of legacy media also thought that creating a website, a traditional website, was it, that if you did a website, you were doing digital. Now, the reality is the world has come on immensely since even the web. I mean, you know, most of these websites are nearly 30 years old. And honestly, a traditional website is nothing like enough, or even a traditional app. We need to move from one or two platforms to having a presence across many platforms. Last week, we launched one video report about a super prison, a gigantic modern prison in El Salvador. Very striking piece. This prison is full of thousands of gang members, tattooed from head to toe. It's almost like a sci-fi film. This piece did very well when we showed it on CNN domestically and internationally, and when we showed it on CNN.com. We put it up on TikTok last Thursday, and from Thursday to Tuesday, so over 5 days, it's now been watched 30.5 million times. 30.5 million. Yeah. So you have to be present. You have to think not from what's convenient to us and what we're used to. You have to start with your audiences, look at and observe the way they're getting their news, and then figure out ways of reaching them in ways which are convenient to them, and then trying to figure out how to turn that into a business model. And if you don't do that, in the end, you're going to get buried by history. When I was at the New York Times over a period of 8 years, actually, we did figure out a model. New York Times has now got 11 million digital subscribers and is making away with multiple products in multiple different platforms and creating a successful, profitable, growing business. And to be honest, I would like to do that at CNN as well, and future-proof CNN as well. But, you know, as I don't have to tell you.
So how are you going to do it?
It's quite a big task.
How are you going to do it? I do read on the web many speculation about what's your digital first strategy. It's funny. I mean, those couple of words, I've been hearing them in newsroom for 25 years. It changed so much. But what are you planning to do for the future, and what kind of change? How's it going to look?
Yeah, the only people who use the word digital are people who don't know much about it, really. It's usually old school media people talk about digital. I mean, digital people don't talk about digital. Well, the answer is, I've talked about this. We're going to build new products, digital products, some of them paid products, so products which people, end users, pay for directly. We're going to build them audience by audience, domestically and internationally, to replace a model which was a traditional model, which is, you know, will still work for many years, but is beginning to run out of steam, which was basically getting paid by cable companies to offer them and multi-channel distributors around the world. getting paid for providing a continuous news channel, TV news channel, and selling traditional television advertising as well. And those traditional means of making money are in decline, as everyone knows. So we'll replace them with new ways of engaging the audience, new platforms, new sources of revenue.
Yeah, but then
it's easy. It's easy when you say it like that.
Yeah,
it turns out to be a little bit harder when you do it.
My problem is, okay, so you're going to be on Instagram and on Facebook and Blue Sky and whatever's going to come, and you're going to have good material, but the users of these platforms are not going to know the difference between this and whatever the PR department of the Hezbollah is putting on the same platform. How is truth and democracy going to survive in these terms?
I don't think you should be so hard on yourself, really. I mean, we have very, very powerful brands, and we have, if we're smart about understanding our audiences, ways of standing out. In the case of CNN, we have very, very well-known, some of the best-known and most gifted on-air journalists in the world, so faces and voices that people understand. We have a brand which is, in the case of CNN, probably the single best-known and best-trusted news brand in the entire free world. And we need proper tactics about how you put those in front of people prominently enough that they know what they're looking at. And we set cookie crumb trails. So if people find us on TikTok or find us on YouTube or find us on Instagram, there is a pathway for them to go and begin to get used to the brand and ultimately come to our own destinations. I'm a very firm believer that although the first time somebody comes across you may well be on a third-party platform, if you're to succeed, you need to encourage more and more people to learn about you on these general platforms, but to seek you out ultimately on your own digital assets. We need to become destinations for people which are branded and where people come to you precisely because they know that what they're going to get is all going to have our stamp of accuracy and approval. And that's the battle. It's quite difficult, which is why many legacy media organizations kind of give up. But actually, I think evidence, and I think the example of the Times shows, if you're dedicated about doing this, you can build successful businesses.
Yeah, CNN is seen, I think, in America and probably around most of the world as center, maybe a slightly left than center outlook on life, which is a difficult position to be in these days after Trump was elected, and we also see the numbers of Fox News, etc. Are you going to change the, how should I say, the general tone of reporting to the center?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't really accept your characterization. I mean, I think it's true that sometimes CNN is talked about as being center left. But mainly, I would say, by people on the right who believe that the right is the center. I mean, I would say rather than trying to pick a spot on the political spectrum, I would like to focus on a fact-based, journalism-based positioning, which is trying to get to the bottom of what's actually going on in the world, and which, because it does that, is often going to be criticized by both the right and the left, and quite possibly the center. I mean, in other words, I don't think we're there to please people who've got ideological perspectives or other identities. We're there to try, we're there to genuinely try and figure out what's going on, which can sometimes mean, and on some stories like, you know, the current Israel-Gaza Palestine conflict can mean that you end up being relatively unpopular with everyone. But our job is actually not to be popular, but to try and report what's happening.
Yeah. Do you think that any new regulation should be imposed on social media and on, well, in fact, on everybody, just to make a level playing field? Because obviously, you can't publish anything you want. You'll be sued if you're wrong or you defame somebody, whereas social networks and many other platforms can do whatever they want.
Well, I certainly don't believe in censorship, and so in other words, I think the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment, which gives very, very great freedom for citizens to say and publish what they want, is a bastion of democracy and freedom. And I don't want, and the risk, of course, of all forms of regulation and censorship of content is they may start off with the best of intentions, but their application in many settings can start coming under political influence, and politicians have got particular interests why they might want to allow some forms of speech and not of others. I think economically, I think that there may be a role for government in terms of the very big digital platforms, the Silicon Valley giants, in governments assessing whether, because of the economic strength and the market position of very big digital companies in markets like digital advertising, there's a case for antitrust, pro-competition antitrust action. And indeed, in the US, under the Biden administration, there has been and are currently very big cases against multiple big digital companies on anti-competition anti-competition charges. And actually, I would say that the signals are, it's very hard to work out yet what the Trump administration, Trump the sequel is going to mean in terms of competition. But certainly some of the people that Mr. Trump is putting into place have also been very vocal in their criticism of very big digital companies and the sheer amount of power that they have in the market. So I think, we want properly regulated markets in media. I don't think I want censorship, though.
Yeah. Tell me, what's your take on the revolution in AI, in artificial intelligence? I mean, it's already doing crazy thing in text, but soon enough you'll have, and you're already starting to see crazy things in video as well. How is that going to change the newsroom at CNN?
Well, I mean, I think firstly, we all have to be very careful about the provenance of the content that we get as we news gather, and we receive media from all sorts of sources. We have to get better at trying to understand, detect, and prevent fake, deep fake video, other forms of AI-enabled disinformation and misinformation to seep into our reporting. So the first thing is we do have to be very careful about that. Against that, I think AIs are really interesting. We most of us have a problem in getting the right stories in the right format to the right people, So making sure that if you are one of our viewers or users or readers, that we find a way of helping you get what you want and need from our services. I think AI can help immensely with that. If instead of reading something, you want to have a conversation with the smart speaker in your kitchen or while you're driving, to ask CNN, what are the headlines? What's happened? I'm not interested in sport. Tell me more about business, or vice versa. I think AI can help us. And by the way, AI very shortly will be able to, I think, to deliver it within a very small number of years, all of our services in Hebrew. As well as in English and in every other major language of the world. So there are many, many ways in which AI can be our friend and help us do our jobs better. Clearly, there are dystopian uses of AI as well. The other thing is we have to do a better job in covering AI, understanding it journalistically, and actually covering the debates that AI is going to prompt.
Yeah, so you see it as an opportunity to scale just by asking the machine to, just for the example, to translate everything, including the speakers, in any number of languages.
Sure. I mean, and so you stopping languages being a barrier to reaching audiences.
All right. We got less than a minute left. I do want to ask you a question that is a little bit about us. We're not biased. I mean, we're unbiased in that thing, but share with us the dilemmas of the newsroom when they have to deal with the Israeli war, what's going on for a year. You get a piece of story saying somebody has bombed a hospital in Gaza and there are 50 dead. Which version do you take?
Well, what I want to say is firstly, all news organizations sometimes make mistakes or get emphasis wrong, and in conflicts, I think there is always a learning curve for any news organization which has got some humility, where you learn how to get it right. We want to source stories properly. We do not want to simply adopt unthinkingly other people's narratives, whether it's the Hamas-controlled health authority in Gaza, whether it's the IDF or anyone else. We want to do our job as journalists to interrogate, to try and make sure we make it very clear when claims are made, their sources, their true sources. With Israel, Gaza, one of the things we determined very early on was that the original horrific Hamas attack on Israel was something we should never let lose out of sight from our coverage. We've been criticized for this by many people who are pro-Palestinian, but we've kept our relationship with key hostage families and bereaved families who lost people in October 2023, and to make that part of the context of how we cover it. But where, we had a very good piece a few weeks ago of an Israeli soldier claiming that that his unit had used Palestinian civilians as human shields. Now that piece was, I thought, was well reported and properly sourced with evidence from IDF soldiers about it. That's a piece which was very unwelcome in some quarters in Israel. Our attempt is not to be to take sides in this, and to do our best to give a straightforward, factually based, and journalistically honest account of what's happening there. I don't want to say we always get it right. We don't. It's difficult, but that's our intention.
Well, I wish you good luck with this difficult task. I'm happy you look at it the way you do. Mark Thompson, thank you very much for this talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you.